Today, Maria will talk us through the journey to founding Kojo, and we'll be sharing with us how it improves control over the procurement process from take-off to close out, saving on material costs, reducing waste, and increasing productivity. James Babcock was one of Kojo's early adopters, and Dan was sharing why they used the product, how they successfully rolled it out, and got this new technology adopted across the whole business, which was founded in the 1950s. Like many products out there, they go through rebrands, pivots, down to change in the market, funding, new clients, which requires a change in structure, team, and so forth. So Maria will be sharing with us all about what she's experienced. So without further ado, let's start with the show.
This is the Propcast, and I'm Louisa Dickins. Before we introduce our guest, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Are you looking for a space for women who make lasers and robots that break glass ceilings? I'm Antonia Soler, co-founder of Women in Construction Tech. If you're a founder, investor, or adopter who believes in advancing women in our industry, please join us at womeninconstructiontech.com.
Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about procurement and how we can connect everyone from office teams, field crews, warehouses and vendors onto one all-inclusive procurement platform. And today we have Maria Davidson, founder and CEO of Kojo, and Dan Babcock, president of James Babcock Inc. So welcome, Maria and Dan.
Thanks, Lou.
Thanks, Lou.
And so procurement is an important part of most industries. Procurement is simply the process of obtaining goods or services, typically for business. So this is no different in the world of construction, as the definition of procurement in construction is a process of securing all the goods and services needed to bring a construction project to completion. So as you can probably understand, it's pretty vital to get it right. So today, Maria is going to be talking us through the journey of founding Kojo, and we'll be sharing with us all the bits of the product, how it improves control over the whole procurement process from takeoff to close out, saving on material costs, reducing waste, and obviously increasing productivity. Now, Dan and Maria actually don't know each other. It's a good sign, which means Maria's team has done a very good job integrating it, because as a founder, I know when I get the call up to speak to some clients, it's usually not good news. But like many products out there, they go through rebrands, they go through pivots, down to change in market, new funding, different clients, which all requires a change in structure, team, and so forth. So Maria's going to be sharing a little bit more about her journey and changes she's sort of been through. So let's get started. And Maria, why don't you talk us through your journey to founding Kojo? What's the reason behind it? A bit about your backstory, and yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we started Kojo back in 2018, we weren't even thinking about construction as much as we were thinking about building cities. The question that we were really, really obsessed with was, how could we make the built environment faster, more efficient, and less error-prone to build? And when we got going, I had moved from London to San Francisco. I'd spent a couple of years in San Francisco working in venture capital. I'd started a company in the fintech space that we later sold. In venture capital, right, we spent a lot of time investing in industries that were really unsexy to most people working in technology, right? A lot of people at the time working in technology wanted to invest in consumer apps and photo sharing apps and, in consumer problems that we all know from our day-to-day lives. But what that meant was that there were these huge industries like construction and trucking and freight and supply chain that a lot of really talented people out in Silicon Valley just didn't know how those industries worked or what solutions could help improve those industries and empower the people that work in those industries. So back in 2018, my co-founder and I decided to quit our jobs, and we said we are going to spend 6 months really diving deep into why it is that projects are so often behind schedule, over budget, and why it's so difficult to build everything from hospitals to apartment buildings to university campuses to solar plants. And in doing that, we spoke to truly thousands of people all across the country that built private projects, that built public projects, that were working on infrastructure, that were working on huge gamut of all the projects that we need in our communities, right? All of these are really critical projects to how cities actually function. And the thing that we kept hearing was 60% of the cost was tied to labor and 40% of the cost was tied to materials. So we'd ask folks, so how do you manage that 40% of materials? Because in the US, 40% of the commercial construction spend, that's more than $300 billion a year. And what people kept telling us was, well, we manage it the same way we've managed it for decades, and in some cases since the 1960s and 1970s. And that meant foremen still walking around, in many cases with a clipboard and a pen, writing down what they need, taking a photo of it and sending in some cases walking around with their phones, texting and calling, and just using a huge array of formats to get what their requisitions actually were over to the purchasing agents. And then we realized that purchasing agents, they had no easy way to compare what prices they could get or what inventory was available, or even to automate the process of actually placing a purchase order. And from beginning to end, we realized that there was just so much breakage in the system, right? When materials would be delivered, there was no easy way to know that the right thing actually arrived in the right place. When invoices would arrive, someone would need to sit there and manually reconcile that invoice matched the purchase order, which matched the invoice, to know that you're actually paying the right amount. And then when it came time to do the manual data entry into your accounting system for all of this, again, we realized that took a huge amount of time. And so that's what led us to start Kojo. It's where we realized that 40% of the entire cost of building these giant projects was still being run, in most cases, in a really manual, very error-prone way that we could help fix.
I love that. And for our audience, obviously, Kojo previously was Agora. What does Kojo mean for the audience for when they look you up? What's the reason behind it?
So Kojo is actually a term from lean manufacturing, which lean manufacturing to us was very inspirational because it's all about the concept of maximizing efficiency whilst minimizing waste. And when we started Agora, which is the old name of the company, we were sitting at my kitchen table and we thought Agora was an awesome name because it was the original Greek marketplace. But what we subsequently learned was that there were a lot of Agoras out there, and we wanted a name that was just uniquely ours, uniquely, fresh, that didn't sound like any other product that had been brought to market for our customers. So yeah, it's a term from lean manufacturing.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And Dan, for our audience, can you please share a little bit more about, I guess, your business, I guess your sort of role there, and how you heard about Kojo too?
Sure. Well, I'm president of James Babcock Incorporated. We're a electrical and systems contractor, so we pretty much turnkey, full service, low voltage plus traditional electrical services. We mostly do a lot of large public projects, meaning jails, schools, libraries. We do a fair amount of design build and private work also. We're based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. I've been involved for about 35 years, working all the way from the apprentice in the field to the guy writing down my material list on a ripped up piece of cardboard, like Maria was talking about, in order to get it in for purchasing. So I've pretty much done everything from push a broom to install conduit to now being president of the company.
The company's been going since what? These are the 1950s as well. So what's the sort of makeup of the team roughly? How many people are in the team?
Company total, we have about north of 100 people. And that's probably 20 in management and 75 or so in the field.
I guess our listeners are going to find out later. Some people think 100 is a lot. Some people might not think a lot. When a business has been going for so long and using the same ways of working, it's a lot of people to get to adopt technology at once. So this is what we're going to be learning a little bit more now. So obviously we know a bit about Kojo, Maria. Who are your sort of clients? Where's your sort of focus areas as well? And then I'd love to hear a bit more about what are the common questions that your clients come to for you to, I guess, answer?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work predominantly with trade contractors all over the US, and those are trade contractors that do commercial projects. So on the lower end, it'll be trade contractors that do about $5 million in annual revenue. On the upper end, it'll be folks who do $1 billion plus. So we truly span a very wide range of the complexity of how a company can operate. And when we started, we focused specifically on electrical contractors. Now we've actually expanded to the 8 major trades. So we work with everyone from mechanical to concrete to drywall, roofing, site preparation. And in terms of the questions that people come to us with, I'd love, Dan, to hear your buying journey with Kojo. But for us, the questions are consistently, how can I make my field team more productive? How can we reduce manual data entry? How can we make it more accurate to reconcile our invoices? And also, crucially, how do we implement a system that allows us to scale? A lot of our customers, and I think, again, Dan can speak to this better than I can, but these are companies that have grown tremendously over the last 10 years. And in many cases, that's meant that these companies have had to ask themselves, well, how do we operate now that we're at a much larger scale? Because the same processes that we used when we were a much smaller shop aren't going to work for us as well now that we're larger. And a lot of those questions are around how do we make sure that all of our projects are consistent in how they operate? And how do we make sure that we actually have analytics on seeing how we're doing compared to how well we thought we were doing? Because especially in the last 3 years with an extremely volatile supply chain and very, very volatile material prices, the difference between being profitable and unprofitable can really just come down to one project going well or going badly. So a lot of those questions come down to what are the best practices and how can we implement technology to actually help us stay profitable, stay on time, and make sure that we come in within our budgets.
Yeah. And Dan, are you hearing what Maria is saying, and you're I guess you must, I'm sure, ask similar questions to Kojo?
Yeah, I can tell you this. I can see why, in my opinion, Kojo's been very successful, and we really love the I'll call it software, I guess, because everything she just said is exactly right. Getting materials, getting them timely. Things have changed. The more we grew, the more I realized we can't, I went to my purchaser when Agora first came around, and Mike, explain to me exactly our process again. How are you getting your orders? And he's like, well, one guy snaps a picture of a piece of cardboard that he wrote with a Sharpie on what he needs. The next guy sends me a text. This guy sends me an email, and I'm like, okay, this is not, this isn't very streamlined. I really love the way that the ordering process went for our guys to get the materials that they need in the exact part numbers, that they need. There's so many times that somebody will call one part something, but when you're ordering it on Kojo, you're getting a picture of it, you're seeing exactly what it is, and you get the exact part number. So the guy in the field sending it to our purchaser and maybe just describing the part, and our purchaser calling one distributor and trying to describe the part. Now it's got the exact catalog number, a picture of the product, and then our purchaser can take that entire order, send it to multiple vendors with the push of a button, and then they enter it into the dashboard and he gets it back, and we are able to select price. A big thing about it too, quite honestly, is pricing. I mean, we'll see huge savings because back in the day, my purchaser would have taken that order and called our favorite vendor and ordered the materials. Now we're sending it out to, if it's a smaller order, 3 to 4 vendors. We're not going to, have 7, 8, 9 vendors bid a small order. We will on a big one. But when they do, they come back, and I can see on my dashboard the amount of savings between if we would have just gone with the one vendor and the next one. I would venture to say every order this is just a guess, but I bet it's a 10, 15% savings.
My partner's in construction, and he was telling me that the price of materials have been going up like 20% each year. Is that correct? Well, I find that astonishing, but I know they've been getting more expensive.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm sure Maria has probably actual data. I'm sure that's something they do, but I can just tell you, yeah, prices have gone through the roof, and it's all different products too, and everything changes. Once PVC came down, copper went up. So yes, it's been, which this has helped us control our pricing increases.
to jump into what Dan was saying there, it really has been a case of as soon as one material price gets under control, another crisis starts with another material. Because we've seen since February 2020, to the point of data on all of this, right? On average, construction input prices for commercial construction are up about 38%. And when you compare today versus February 2020, you have materials like copper wire and cable that are up 33%. You have materials like iron and steel that are up 56%. You have certain energy materials that are actually up more than 100%. And that really makes it very difficult to stay profitable, because a lot of our customers, they locked in those projects when those materials cost something very different. And so that's, to the point that Dan was making, why it really is so important to get multiple quotes and to make sure that you really are getting truly the best price that you can be.
Yeah, I guess everyone, especially in I guess this sort of economic climate, that everyone is looking at cutting costs wherever they can. Now, I guess on the topic of, I guess, the finance side, I know, Maria, your Codos product is developed a lot. You've got different sort of fintech applications. Could you sort of elaborate a little bit more about how your product's changed over time and maybe some future changes you've got planned, if you're allowed to share with us, Dan, and the audience?
I'll try to share without revealing too much. Otherwise, my marketing team will be upset with me. In terms of the product, we've been building a lot of product. The focus for us is really building Kojo into the one-stop shop for trade contractors. And over the past 5 years, we've heard a lot of contractors coming to us and saying, hey, I have a warehouse that right now, no one in my field team actually has visibility into what is in that warehouse. Or I have my invoice matching process, which is entirely manual. Can you help us automate that? And so our roadmap has really been driven by listening to our customers. And the thing that we've consistently seen is many people will have the same feature request. If we ever hear a feature request more than once, we know that's not just those two people asking us. That means that there are probably hundreds of our customers for whom this could be helpful. And that's meant that in the last couple of years, we've developed a warehouse product that now allows customers to digitize their warehouse inventory, to manage it in a way that's dynamic, to show the field what is actually available in the warehouse so that they don't order everything anew, but they can pull materials straight out of the warehouse. And that allows people to reuse materials that they've already paid for, which is obviously very helpful to the bottom line. We're doing a lot of work around invoice matching and payments, because again, we've seen that that's a huge pain point for our customers, right? People today still have a really tough time tracking who they have paid, who they haven't paid. In some cases that means writing out checks and sending them out in the mail and keeping an Excel somewhere where you track all the comings and goings of those checks. And in some cases, that means paying with credit cards and paying with ACH. But all of that requires still a lot of manual handling and a lot of manual supervision. So our roadmap has really been focused around, from true end-to-end, from the beginning of a project to the closeout of a project, being that one-stop shop where contractors can handle everything tied to their materials needs.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Everything you were saying is literally the pain points that I wish you were in the UK, which my partner complains about the whole time. And we've just done a refurb of the house. There were materials everywhere. There were receipts everywhere. So much stuff was left over. And this is just one very, very small project. And I saw how much it cost extra. I think whenever you get a quote for a development or building, it's always you put 25% or more. But that's from literally waste and just costs going up. So I completely see the value here, and come over to the UK, Maria, please. Dan, I'm sure our audience would like to know about how did your team take it when you were like, right, let's try something new. Let's try technology. Because I know you've also trialed a few other technologies. But this, you said you've rolled out across the whole business, which is great. And you said you did it pretty quickly. Why was it so smooth?
When we first started with Kojo, we had one purchaser, and I got him on board. They did a nice job of, we did some online meetings for, probably a couple hours to kind of get everybody in the know on how the software works. And then I took 3 of our foremen. I took one that was a little older. We probably got 4, 5, 6 foremen that have worked for us over 40 years. And then we got some younger guys, some middle guys. So I took an older gentleman that's been doing this a long time, a middle, and a young one. So thinking, okay, young one's going to be very tech savvy, middle one may be okay. So I only did 3 projects and 3 foremen. We didn't just roll it out to the whole company. We did 3. And it came back that, the older gentleman did just fine with it. It was, it's user friendly. We did everything on iPads. And of course, the other 2 did too. Once we, there were a few things we had to get figured out internally, and Goret's time worked through a few things that we found some areas that needed improvement, I guess, and they did it right away. Then I rolled it out to maybe 5 more, made sure that was going smooth, and then I rolled it out to everybody. And we just did a little training session, showed everybody how to use it, and I gave them about another 2 weeks and said, after that, there's emergencies, there's special reasons you'd call the purchaser, but there's no more text, there's no more emails. All your orders need to come through Kojo. And it I'd say within 3 weeks, it was, everybody had figured it out and everything was working smooth. So we take baby steps on anything I do, because Maria was right when she was saying, or maybe it was you, Lou, but construction is a little behind on, I'd say, technology, but we don't want to be, not all of us. So we do got to. I've always taken baby steps with all our technology type changes.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for that. Maria, I'm sure this is nice feedback to hear.
No, it's my favorite feedback to hear, right? Because to us, something that we've always been super conscious of is we want to build products that are easy to use. We want to build products that are intuitive. If a product is amazing and beautifully architected, but it's difficult to onboard, that's not a good product. And for us, one of the key metrics that we track is how quickly can we get our customers onboarded? How intuitive is it to them? How delightful is it to them? How much better does it make their day? And so hearing that from Dan is, to me, it's one of the coolest things about what I do is hearing, hey, this thing that you work really, really hard to build was easy for us to understand and was able to start making a difference to our business from the get-go.
Yeah, well, makes a difference. You did it in 3 weeks and got everyone trained up. That's pretty incredible. I don't think you hear, this is my 11th season of the podcast. Things don't happen that quickly. Now, you've integrated Kojo with other products. One, which is Procore, which have been on this season. Dan, I know you've you've used Procore as well. Who else do you integrate with, like Maria? I guess that offers more of like a full service to your sort of clients. Can you share this with our audience? Like what does each integration provide as a value add?
Yeah, well, integrations are incredibly important, right? Because one of the major advantages of bringing technology into an organization is that you no longer have different systems operating in silos. And so that's why for us from the beginning, our philosophy was we want to integrate and we want to work with all of the major systems that our customers are using such that data from Kojo can flow seamlessly into those systems and our customers can have an accurate picture of how much they're spending and what they're spending on any system that they log into. So we integrate with project management systems like Procore and like Autodesk. We also integrate with pretty much all of the major accounting systems because, again, our customers in many cases use those as the source of truth for, handling everything from payroll to generally kind of being their general ledger for their financials. So for us from the very beginning, integrations have been something that we've really focused on and worked very hard to make sure that they are built in a first-class way and that they work incredibly smoothly.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And in terms of, you shared a bit with the audience, and Dan and I guess what you sort of have planned. Is there since pivoting and going into the construction technology space, I'm sure you've seen a lot of sort of change. Is there any major trends you've seen, maybe some challenges you've sort of overcome in the market, or anything which you're sort of predicting other than, further adoption of, good use case studies?
All right. Trends we're seeing, one is we're seeing data is becoming increasingly more important, right? People want to have data at their fingertips. People want to be able to compare data across their estimates, their actuals instantaneously. And crucially, people want to have that data flow seamlessly across all of the different systems that they use. Another major trend that we're seeing is that a lot of the people entering the construction industry, right, they grew up with Amazon, they grew up with phones in their pockets. And so they want everything to be as easy and seamless as possible. And that's been something that we've really been very excited about, and that over the last 5 years, the amount of product requests and suggestions that we're getting from our customers has only grown with time, right? As more and more people get excited about the potential for technology. I'd say another major trend is fintech, right? When you think about financing and construction, again, Dan can speak to this with a lot of experience. Financing in construction is still very difficult. And in many cases, that's actually because it's been hard for the traditional financial institutions to get into construction, because in many cases, they don't have the data around how construction companies operate, or they don't have an understanding of how construction really works, right? It's not, in many cases, their core competency. And so something we've seen there is we've had a lot of customers be very excited about talking to us about how we can help them improve their cash flow, and how we can help make payments easier, and how we can help make sure that you're never paying a wrong invoice. We just had a customer the other day told me that they got an invoice for $12,000 that should have been $120 because the unit of measurement was off. And they said, that's the kind of thing that we could have just paid, because we're getting thousands of invoices a month, and it's impossible for us to know that each one is being meticulously checked. So I think that's something that we're seeing customers be very, very excited about.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Maria. Dan, is there anything, I guess, since you've been in this industry, any sort of trends you've seen on your side?
Yeah, I mean, everything Maria talked about, and then when you talk about a Procore or we use Foundation for our accounting, and anything anything technology wise as far as documentation and easy approval process, let's say. So whether it's doing daily reports in the field with pictures that you can go back and prove your case months and months later, maybe about a condition in the field, that helps. The digitizing, the new invoice approval that Kojo has been a game changer really for us. We don't use all the things, to be honest. We don't use the warehouse yet. We don't connect with our foundation just yet, but the invoice approval process probably took, if I have 6 project managers, it took probably 2 hours to 3 hours a week out of their time of approving invoices, because now our accounts receivable person gets the invoice from our vendor. She then just, I guess, drags it into the Kojo. And if it matches our purchase order that went out on Kojo, then it automatically enters into Foundation, and it takes my PM out of the mix. He no longer has to be involved in that invoice. And that was something that the last thing any project manager wanted to do every week and every month was approve their invoices. So now we have a process in place that it saves our accounts receivable person time, and it saves our project manager's time. So it's a win-win for both.
Yeah, I think it's everyone listening in from whatever sector you're in, no one likes doing invoices. If you can save any time on that mundane task and do it through a simple app, that's great. And you mentioned about, I guess, reality capture as well on site. There's some great technologies out there. There's one obviously on one of the podcasts we recorded with Open Space. There's loads of other businesses doing something similar. So that might be one for the listeners to listen to. Really conscious of time. So how we sort of wrap this final part up of this podcast is that we do the LMRE part. So we'll take it in turns. So L is like, what's like a main lesson you've learned? M is there anyone you want to give a shout out to? It could be a person, a product, a service, whatever. R is what's been the most rewarding part working in the construction technology space. And E is what are you most excited about for the future? So, Maria, do you want to go with the first one, which is what's the main lesson you've learned throughout your career?
Throughout my career, wow, that's that's a big question. I'd say the single most important lesson is listen to your customers. One of the best things for us is we're working with folks who've been in the industry since the 1950s. We have so much to learn, and we really approach everything with a true learner's mindset. One of the main characteristics I'd say of everyone on the Kojo team is just being really, really intellectually curious and wanting to learn why is something the way that it is, and how could we make it better, and how can we make it more streamlined, and how we can make it more efficient. And I think that everyone on the team, in fact, spends a lot of time with our customers because that's how we learn. So I'd say that that's the single most important thing is have your customers guide you.
And just be a bloody good listener. I completely agree. Being a good listener, inquisitive are two things that I look for in my team as well. Dan, right, the Empire, is there anyone you want to give a mention to in this podcast? It could be a product, a service, anyone. It could be obviously the Kojo team. We love them, but who would you like to give a shout out to?
No, I mean that's what we're on here for. I mean, they're one of our. We've tried a lot of stuff. Not everything's worked. Lessons I've learned in construction is we're not perfect. We screw up, and any of our customers know that when we do, we fix it right away. And not that theirs were screw ups, but if there was a glitch or an item that was labeled wrong, we would point it out to them. They'd fix it right away. Now there's been, we did a tool tracking probably 5-6 years ago when one of the tool tracking things came out, and you put a barcode. I'm not going to say it, and we used it for about a year and spent a lot of money each month, and it just didn't work. I don't know if it didn't work, but it wasn't user friendly. So we canceled it. So we tried different technologies, and if they don't work, we move on. So, but this one worked. So
I feel like a key theme of this podcast is like make sure your technology is user friendly and feedback on both sides.
100%.
100%.
Okay, right. Now, Maria, back to you. What's been one of the most rewarding parts of working in this space? Rewarding to see and to be part of?
My favorite thing is actually going to conferences and seeing customers come up and having those customers tell us how much Kojo has changed their day to day. That to me is consistently the most rewarding thing. And there's just something really amazing about it, right? Because at this point, we have tens of thousands of monthly active users. So it's kind of impossible for me personally to speak with every one of them on a monthly basis. But I think there's something about when people come up to you in person and just show you, look, see, Kojo's on my home screen. And talk about how much easier it's made their jobs. And in many cases, how it's eliminated a lot of the parts of their jobs that they really didn't like, right? To what you mentioned, like reconciling invoices. That's not the fun part for a lot of people. Same thing with doing manual data entry, right? That's not the fun part. So hearing from people about how we've been able to make their jobs just a lot more enjoyable and, make it so that they look forward to going into work in the mornings because they know that a lot of those parts that used to be tedious and manual and repetitive and now automated. Yeah, that I really love.
I love the energy and the passion you have here. And everyone listening in, Maria and I spoke, it must have been for the first time, back end of 2019. I think we were sort of mid-pandemic. And it was early stages for both our businesses. And I guess since then, Maria's gone on to raise twice in the past 3 years. They closed their Series C last year. They've grown their business to over 100 people. They're getting this sort of feedback from their clients, and it's awesome to see and also to follow your sort of growth as well. So I just want to say big shout out to the Kojo team as well. Now, okay, so As it's Dan's first podcast, which obviously Maria and I are delighted to be doing it with him, we'll finish with you, Dan. So what are you most excited about in terms of like the future of construction?
Well, specifically on the technology and anything that speeds up our process of building a building. If one other point about the Kojo system, we touched on the pricing when we get our, daily, when we send our daily prices out. The other thing is availability, because, as everybody's heard it, we're having a hard time getting materials. So that's an easy way for us to see what vendors have what items. So anything that makes us build buildings faster. If you think back to the submittal process days, even probably 10, but 15 years ago, when we would bring 10 full sets of drawings in, stamp them, pack them back up, send them to the architect. The architect would pack them up, send them to the electrical engineer. The electrical engineer would approve them, send them to the architect structure. You know what I'm saying? Now we simply get our PDF copies of drawings, we stamp them, we upload them into Procore, and they get approved in their back. I mean, sometimes you're talking about a 48-hour process when it was a 3 to 4 week process 10 years ago. So those are the kind of things in construction that I think are exciting.
Yeah, no, I love that. Just to I find that like astounding. I still find it weird. Like my dad used to send me like faxes, and like maybe people still do. When I first went into the world of recruitment, my first job, if I wanted to show someone a candidate, I'd leave my office, print out a CV, walk wherever it was in London, take whatever tube, and knock on the door and go, "Here's his profile." It's crazy. Like there's so much digitalization that needs to happen across like every sector. If you just think every year as we all innovate and trial technologies, actually use them, feedback, it makes everyone's lives a lot easier and more affordable. But look, we're finishing the podcast. Maria, Dan, thank you guys both for joining. It's been wonderful. And my audience will definitely, I'm sure, reach out to you with further questions. But otherwise, thank you so much. And I'll catch up with you after the show.
Thanks so much, Lou.
Thank you, Lou. Appreciate it.
Making a high-quality podcast like this one takes a lot of work. That's a fact. But not when you hire a podcast company. With our white glove experience, we handle everything for you. From guest outreach all the way through to publishing and promotion, we handle it all. You show up to hold great interviews and build relationships with your guests, and we take care of everything else. Podcasting is not just about the audience. Every podcast interview is the start of a new relationship. With a weekly podcast, you'd build relationships with 52 ideal partners or prospects through your podcast interviews over the next 12 months. Do you believe that 52 new relationships would help grow your business? We do. Contact Jason at apodcastcompany.com and let's talk.